Hello everyone. Tonight we travel back more than 3,000 years into the sands of Egypt, where golden treasures and ancient secrets lie buried beneath desert silence. This is the story of a boy king whose tomb would become the most famous discovery in archaeology, but also one of the most feared. The legend of the curse of King Tutankhamun has haunted history, spreading fear of Pharaoh's revenge across the world. But is it myth, coincidence, or something far darker? Our story begins in the Valley of the Kings, a desolate place along the Nile where generations of pharaohs were entombed, their bodies preserved for eternity, and their graves filled with riches meant to accompany them into the afterlife. Among these kings was Tutankhamun, the boy pharaoh who ascended the throne at around 9 years old and died under mysterious circumstances at only 18 or 19. His reign was short and relatively unremarkable compared to the great pharaohs of Egypt, yet his legacy would eclipse them all because of what happened centuries later when his resting place was disturbed. The tomb of Tutankhamun remained hidden for over 3 millennia, protected by chance, secrecy, and perhaps something more. Unlike the grand monuments of other pharaohs that were plundered long ago, his resting place was modest and almost forgotten, buried under rubble from nearby construction in antiquity. This accident preserved it until the early 20th century, when an ambitious archaeologist named Howard Carter set out on a determined search. Carter had spent years exploring the Valley of the Kings, convinced that Tutankhamun's tomb still lay undiscovered. His patron, Lord Carnarvon, a wealthy English aristocrat fascinated with Egyptology, financed the excavation. For 5 long years, Carter dug through dust and disappointment, finding little more than broken artifacts. Carnarvon, frustrated by the lack of progress, considered pulling his funding, but in November 1922, Carter made a discovery that would change history. His team uncovered steps leading downward, steps untouched for thousands of years. With pounding hearts, they dug further, revealing a sealed doorway stamped with the royal seal of Tutankhamun. Carter wired Lord Carnarvon to come at once. When Carnarvon arrived, the 2 men stood before the sealed entrance together. With trembling hands, Carter made a small hole in the door, inserted a candle, and peered inside. Carnarvon, his face pale with anticipation, asked, "Can you see anything?" And Carter replied with words that became immortal, "Yes, wonderful things." Gold glimmered in the flickering light, chariots, statues, thrones, and treasures beyond imagination. The tomb was intact. They had found what no one thought still existed, the untouched resting place of a pharaoh. News of the discovery spread like wildfire across the world. Egypt, Britain, and America were consumed by Tutmania, a frenzy of fascination with the boy king. But along with the excitement came something darker. For on the walls of the tomb, and whispered in ancient texts, were warnings. The Egyptians believed fiercely in protecting the dead. To disturb a pharaoh was to invite a curse, a punishment from beyond the grave. Some claimed that inscribed near the tomb was a chilling warning. Death shall come swiftly to those who disturb the peace of the king. Though Carter himself denied such an inscription existed, the rumors were unstoppable. At first, the warnings were dismissed as superstition, but then the deaths began. Only a few months after the tomb was opened, Lord Carnarvon, Carter's patron, fell gravely ill. He had been bitten on the cheek by a mosquito. The wound became infected, and within weeks he developed blood poisoning and pneumonia. On April 5, 1923, he died in Cairo. At the exact moment of his death, lights in the city flickered and went out. In England, his beloved dog let out a howl and collapsed dead at the same instant. Newspapers seized the story, declaring that Pharaoh's curse had claimed its first victim. The world was captivated and horrified. Suddenly, every misfortune linked to the excavation became part of the curse's legend. Within the next few years, more deaths followed. George J. Goode, a wealthy American who visited the tomb, fell ill soon afterward and died of pneumonia. Prince Ali Kamel Fahmy Bey of Egypt, who had also toured the site, was shot dead by his wife. Arthur Mace, a member of Carter's team, succumbed to arsenic poisoning. Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, the radiologist who first X-rayed the mummy of Tutankhamun, mysteriously died of an unknown illness soon after. In total, By 1929, at least 9 people associated with the discovery were dead, many under strange circumstances. The press around the world proclaimed that the mummy's curse was real. Headlines screamed of Pharaoh's revenge, and the public became enthralled with the idea that an ancient king's spirit was reaching across centuries to strike down those who dared disturb his rest. Carter, however, remained skeptical. He himself lived another 16 years after the discovery, dying peacefully in 1939. To him, the curse was nothing more than myth and coincidence. Yet the sheer number of tragedies surrounding the tomb fueled belief that something sinister lingered in those chambers. What made the story more chilling were the eerie details tied to Carnarvon's death. The wound on his cheek, some claimed, was in the exact same place where Tutankhamun's mummified face bore a mark. Coincidence or supernatural revenge? Even seasoned scientists could not explain why the lights of Cairo went out at the moment of his death. And his dog's sudden demise in England, it was too much for skeptics to dismiss lightly. Those who studied the legend further uncovered strange accounts. Some suggested that ancient Egyptian priests, aware of tomb robbers, had laced the burial chambers with poisonous fungi or deadly bacteria that lay dormant for centuries until the tomb was opened. When inhaled, these toxins could cause fevers, infections, and even death. Could this be the scientific explanation for the so-called curse? Others, however, believed that no amount of science could explain the strange timing of events, the sheer number of misfortunes, and the atmosphere of dread that seemed to surround those connected to Tutankhamun's tomb. Even beyond the deaths, there were strange occurrences. Visitors to the tomb reported feeling sudden chills, as if unseen eyes were watching them. Some claimed to hear whispers in the dark corridors, or to see fleeting shadows move across the golden walls. A photographer who developed his images of the tomb discovered strange blurs and glowing streaks in his plates, distortions that seemed unnatural. Every artifact from the tomb seemed charged with an aura of mystery, as if carrying the energy of the long, dead pharaoh. Meanwhile, the treasures of Tutankhamun were transported to Cairo and displayed to the world. Crowds gathered in awe, but whispers of the curse never ceased. The golden death mask of the boy king, with its serene face and piercing eyes, became an icon of both beauty and dread. People stared into those eyes and felt an uncanny presence, as though Tutankhamun himself was watching from beyond, silently judging all who dared to gaze upon him. The legend of the curse only grew as time went on. Hollywood seized upon it, weaving stories of mummies' revenge and ancient pharaohs rising from their graves. Books, plays, and films spread the tale until it became embedded in popular culture. To this day, when people hear the name Tutankhamun, they do not only think of golden treasures, but also of the dreaded curse that surrounded his discovery. But what is truth and what is myth? Was the curse of King Tutankhamun a real supernatural force, or was it simply a story inflated by newspapers hungry for headlines? The truth may lie somewhere in between. For while skeptics can explain away many of the deaths as coincidence, there remains an undeniable power in the idea of a curse. The ancient Egyptians themselves believed fiercely in protecting their dead, in harnessing magic and prayer to guard their tombs. Even if the curse is not a literal force, the belief in it may have created its own kind of power, shaping events, fueling fear, and ensuring that Tutankhamun's name would never be forgotten. And so, in the sands of Egypt, the boy king's legacy endured not through his reign, but through his death. The discovery of his tomb brought him immortality, and the legend of his curse ensured that the world would remember him not as an insignificant ruler, but as a pharaoh whose spirit reached across time to protect his eternal rest. The story of Tutankhamun's curse did not end with the early death of Carnarvon and others. Instead, it spread like wildfire, haunting the world with chilling tales and mysterious events that seemed too precise to be mere chance. To this day, whispers of the curse echo whenever his name is spoken, as if the boy king himself still demands respect from beyond the grave. Let us step deeper into the mystery to examine the strange deaths, eerie happenings, and the lingering shadows that made the curse of Tutankhamun more than just a tale. After Lord Carnarvon's sudden death in 1923, the world press latched on to every tragedy connected with the tomb. Newspapers across Europe and America printed sensational stories of Pharaoh's revenge, fueling both fascination and terror. The idea that an ancient curse had been awakened was irresistible to the public. And the curse seemed relentless in claiming victims. One of the most puzzling cases was that of George J. Goode, an American millionaire. After visiting the tomb, he reportedly complained of a sudden fever. Within days, his health collapsed. Despite doctors' efforts, he died shortly afterward, his demise feeding the growing list of cursed names. Then there was Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, the radiologist who had X-rayed Tutankhamun's mummy. Healthy before entering the tomb, he soon fell sick with an unknown illness that baffled physicians, and he died mysteriously before completing further studies. Richard Bethel, another of Carter's close assistants, met a violent end. In 1929, he was found dead in his bed, smothered to death. His sudden and brutal death shocked the archaeological community. Even stranger, his father, Lord Westbury, distraught after his son's death, leapt from the 7th floor of his London apartment. Before doing so, he left behind a note lamenting that he could not escape the curse of Tutankhamun. By this time, the list of deaths linked to the tomb had reached nearly 30 individuals. Each tragedy added weight to the legend. Doctors, politicians, aristocrats, and even family members of those involved were claimed by misfortune. Skeptics still argued coincidence, but for believers the pattern was undeniable. Tutankhamun's curse was real, and it was unstoppable. Even the archaeologist Howard Carter, who had long denied the curse, could not escape its shadow. Though he lived until 1939, long after most of his colleagues had died, strange stories surrounded him. Friends reported that his home was haunted by ghostly figures and eerie noises, as if unseen forces followed him. Some claimed his pet canary was killed by a cobra, the very symbol of Egyptian royalty, soon after the tomb was opened. The cobra, a sacred emblem of Pharaoh, seemed like a warning. Carter dismissed these tales as nonsense, but the coincidence was uncanny. But what if the curse was not supernatural at all? Some scientists suggested a deadly explanation hidden in the tomb itself. When the chambers were sealed over 3,000 years ago, the air inside became stagnant, creating the perfect breeding ground for dangerous microorganisms. Modern studies have confirmed that ancient tombs can contain toxic molds such as Aspergillus niger, which can cause respiratory illness and infections. The sealed darkness may also have preserved deadly bacteria. Inhaled by unsuspecting explorers, these pathogens could indeed kill. Still, not all deaths fit neatly into the scientific explanation. Why did some visitors to the tomb survive unharmed while others perished? Why did misfortune seem to strike with such precision, often tied directly to those who disturbed Tutankhamun's body? Science could not fully explain the uncanny timing. The deaths of Carnarvon, Goode, Reed, Bethel, and many others created a pattern too eerie to ignore. Adding to the mystery were the strange behaviors of the artifacts themselves. Objects taken from the tomb seemed to carry misfortune to their new owners. One tale spoke of a tourist who bought a trinket, said to come from the Valley of the Kings. Soon after, his house burned down, his wife fell ill, and his fortune vanished. Though provenances of these items were often uncertain, the stories deepened the legend that Tutankhamun's belongings carried a malevolent energy. Even in modern times, the curse seems alive. When Tutankhamun's treasures toured the world in the 1970s, thousands of people flocked to see them. Yet strange accidents followed the exhibitions. In Paris, a fire broke out in the museum displaying his artifacts. In London, workers claimed to hear whispers in the night and see flickering shadows around the exhibits. Some guards refused to work alone near the Golden Mask, saying it gave them chills as though the boy king's eyes were alive. One of the most infamous modern cases occurred in 1966, when Dr. Gamal Mehrez, director of antiquities in Egypt, dismissed the curse as foolish superstition. Confidently, he stated that he would lead a major exhibition of Tutankhamun's treasures abroad. But on the very night before the artifacts were due to leave Egypt, Mehrez died suddenly of a massive heart attack. Many pointed to his arrogance, claiming he had provoked the curse by mocking it. And then there is the tale of the airplane crash of 1972. When artifacts from Tutankhamun's tomb were being transported for exhibition, one of the planes carrying them suffered a technical failure and crashed. Though not all items were aboard, the tragedy was once again linked to the curse. Every accident, every death, every strange event tied to the treasures of the boy king fed the belief that his spirit still guarded them fiercely. But what of Tutankhamun himself? The boy king was only a teenager when he died, his life cut short under circumstances that remain mysterious. Some historians believe he was assassinated, perhaps struck on the head. Others argue that he died from an infected leg fracture or malaria. Whatever the truth, he was buried quickly, in a tomb that may not have been prepared for him originally. Some scholars even believe the famous golden mask may not have been made for Tutankhamun at all, but for another royal, possibly a queen, adapted hastily for his burial. If true, then perhaps the anger of the curse is not simply Tutankhamun's, but a deeper fury of a spirit wronged, a soul denied proper honor in death. Could this explain the intensity of the legend? Could the boy king's restless spirit demand vengeance on those who disturbed his fragile rest? There are also stories of psychic visions tied to the curse. One such tale involves the novelist Marie Corelli, who in 1923 warned in writing that the most dire punishment follows any rash intruder into a sealed tomb. Weeks later, Carnarvon died. Other psychics claimed to sense an aura of dread around the treasures, warning that they should not be removed from their sacred place. Whether coincidence or not, these warnings became woven into the curse's lore. The legend has grown so strong that even today, some archaeologists approach ancient tombs with hesitation. Though science has advanced, the human imagination is still haunted by the shadow of Tutankhamun. The curse has become more than just a story. It is a symbol of mankind's eternal fear of disturbing the unknown, and perhaps that is the greatest truth of the curse. Whether supernatural or psychological, it has endured for a century, refusing to be dismissed. It is a reminder that the past still holds mysteries that cannot be fully explained, that ancient beliefs still echo across time. For in the silence of the Valley of the Kings, the boy king sleeps on, his eyes watching from behind his golden mask, his spirit guarding his treasures, his curse alive in the whispers of history. So the question remains, was the curse of Tutankhamun real, or was it all coincidence and myth? Skeptics will argue forever that there was nothing supernatural, that bad luck, infection, and hysteria fueled the story. But those who believe in the curse will point to the chilling list of deaths, the strange timing, the eerie coincidences, and the feeling, unshakable, undeniable, that Tutankhamun still guards his tomb. Perhaps in the end, the truth is not meant to be known. Perhaps the curse itself was Tutankhamun's greatest legacy, a final act of power from a young pharaoh who refused to be forgotten. For though his reign was short, his story has lasted more than 3,000 years. He has achieved what every pharaoh desired, immortality. And maybe that is the greatest curse of all, that we, the living, can never escape the memory of the boy king, his treasures, and the shadows that linger in his golden tomb. The desert winds still blow across the Valley of the Kings, whispering through the sands, carrying secrets from the past. If you listen closely, you might hear them, the echoes of a young pharaoh, warning, guarding, waiting. The curse of Tutankhamun is not gone, it is eternal.